Right behind us, Francine there. See you next week.
Wait a minute.
He's coming.
My name is Terry Caruso. I'm the president of the Dayton Village Citizens Coalition, and we also have the South Brunswick Garden Club as part of our group. And thanks to Art Lee, who I'm looking for right now. He just went out the door. Here he is, Art Lee. Thanks to Art, he put together this garden seminar. So this is what, probably our 5th garden seminar? Yes. So we have some great speakers today.
So our silver award is spreading awareness about childhood obesity. So we'll be going into Brooks Crossing Elementary School and teaching the kids about childhood obesity. And we'll be handing out flyers today. We have like little tables set up over there in the corner.
We're just trying to raise awareness through our community to show that being obese as a child is very dangerous. And we're trying to show everyone how we can, try to stop this from progressing and try to just, slow down the numbers a little bit.
I'm going to introduce our first guest, Dr. Charlie Leck.
A little bit of spring in the air is so nice, and it just reminded me this morning. I thought, gee, it's just about 6 weeks from now in Central America, birds will be getting ready to come north. And there's one little one I'm especially thinking of, the little hummingbird that will come back to our yard, and maybe you'll get a hummingbird in your garden area. And now they're down in Central America, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and the Spanish name for them is picaflor. In fact, they're stoking up right now. Today, they better be putting their noses in some of those big tropical mallows and drinking the nectar. And then they'll come up in April and eventually get back to, ours will get back to New Jersey here. So I think we should feel obligated. If they're going to all that trouble, we should get some flowers ready for them. Get your salvias in mind and things like that.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I didn't even know that this was like a thing in South Brunswick, but it makes me really happy to know that there's so many gardeners out there who are interested in making sure that New Jersey is as sustainable as possible. But like I said, I'm from New Jersey, and I graduated from school, and all of my friends were like, oh, I'm going to be a personal chef, this and that, which I did when I was in school also. I was working freelance as a personal chef. And for people with dietary restrictions and allergies and things like that, they just love having a personal chef. But that's not really the kind of community that we have in New Jersey so much. So I knew I wanted to come back home. And I had this like really unique kind of education coming home with. And there was one thing that I knew that I wanted to do when I got back that was really the most important, and that was to sort of educate children on cooking. So that's what I do.
I like these.
They might think we're ex-cons.
No, I love these. Because when they rip, I just put them into my armpits.
But I kind of cleaned up that triangle there, that little center island here, and then
All the way up the edge.
yeah.
You see where there's one bag that's
Okay.
the last bag?
Yeah.
What I did is I went in there and threw everything out. And then I went back and picked it up.
Oh, you went in the tree.
I went in the trees, threw everything out, and then went back and picked it up.
Hello, Seal.
Looks like you're done.
Hi, Seal. Almost.
You come early, right? And you got everything done.
Yeah, you remember Sarah? She's gonna. We're gonna do a little group photo. Oh, here comes my friend Bob. Hello, Bob. All right, we got more. Woohoo! Watch your car.
Watch it. Who's that, Bob?
I brought my own.
I used to ride a motorcycle.
Some people
Well,
don't,
where?
some people don't like motorcycles. It's sort of precious thing that they do.
You know, I said, what's wrong with you guys? You should be after where the internet access. But they weren't.
And all these,
Mark, there's another.
and all these
You want one of these, Mark?
they can just be attacked.
Okay. All right, I got one.
What's today? Oh, the celebration is Sunday the 27th.
Okay, I'm just going to go over. I'm just going to pick up when I go.
Full leather, right? They're like phony leather, not really.
There was a lady who was here.
Get you the house as soon as it slows down a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no.
Where do you pay for these? Yes. All right, just $5. I was leaving and I saw these things. So that may get you change.
Was my daughter asked me particularly, if you see any strawberry, blueberry, please pick up.
Forget what this is called.
Oh, did you bring a knife, ma'am? Did you bring this knife? Yes. Oh, I was going to ask you to take it back because I didn't really. We could probably sell the whole cake. Oh, Oh, hi, Bob. How are you? Nice party last year.
These are tall, spiky ones. And these are...
These bloom in the fall.
Is Joan coming over?
In the summer?
August. And if I want more than I brought, those are taken up there? That's...
It's all packed. Thank you.
It's over there too.
The township are dead.
Are you collecting the money?
Bakery?
Yeah, I sold seeds.
Oh, okay, great.
We're the New Jersey Chargers or the San Diego Chargers? There you go. Oh, wow.
A watermelon crepe, Myrtle. Wow. Wow. Fancy. Fancy.
How's the party girl?
I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stuff is not only moving up, it's
Yes, can you find capacity then I think you should do them.
Hey, I don't know who brought the lilac.
Yes, we live in a Victorian house that was built either in the late 1800s or early 1900s, as were all of our neighbors. And the DVCC started because a realtor came to us and all of our neighbors and wanted us to sell our homes and tear them down and put up a, well, it was to be a pharmacy. Largely an idea that we realized would end up with an empty pharmacy in about 5 years, since there are other stores that would be going up. All of our neighbors had renovated their houses and had put a lot of effort into their houses and liked old houses. So we got together and we said, nope, we're not going to sell, even though they offered us money above market value. And we said we just think we should get together and help each other save those houses. And that's what we did. And that's how we got started. Some neighbors down the street, the McDermotts, which live across from the elementary school, they came up to me and said they're going to tear down the Slack House. And I said, what's the Slack House? So they said it was the historic house that a doctor had lived in, and Mrs. McDermott was pregnant at the time and said that she was going to lay down in front of the bulldozers. And I thought that was a pretty dangerous thing to do. So we brought it to a meeting and we said, what should we do about that? So we decided to talk to Wawa, which was the group that were going to tear down the house. What they had done was they had prepared the house for demolition, which was required by ordinance. So they had already started to fill the basement up with gravel, and they had already removed all the asbestos, which meant they'd pretty much taken all of the plumbing out, as well as the heating system. And they'd taken the asbestos shingles off, leaving a building that was covered with black tar paper that was peeling off of the clapboard that was underneath. So we said, well, we'll talk to them about saving the house. We talked to the mayor, and we talked to the town planning, and we talked to the zoning. In order to have a demolition, you have to have a demolition permit. And the deputy mayor and the mayor at the time said they would support our effort to not give them a demolition permit. And that's what they did. They refused to permit them to tear the house down. And Wawa then appealed to the county board of planning for a demolition permit. I was invited to go to that meeting, and it's not open to the public. It's just the petitioner who can go. But the planning board at the county level allowed me to speak. And I pointed out that Wawa wanted the whole, what is about an acre of land at the time, to extend their parking lot. But the house sat on a corner of that lot, not in the middle, but in a corner, and it didn't come anywhere near any of the parts that needed for the parking lot. It was just going to be torn down. The planning board at the county level said they couldn't deny the permit. They took a break. They negotiated in the hallway with the attorney for Wawa, and they all rushed in because they love historic houses, and they said, you'll get what you want. And I wasn't sure that's what we wanted, but they essentially saved the house. We negotiated an agreement with the town at the mayor's office with Wawa, and the negotiation was that for the first year we had to make the outside look pretty. And they didn't care how long it took us to make the inside pretty or fix it. But we had to make the outside presentable so we wouldn't detract from their business. And that's what we did. And they wrote it into the deed and they gave us the house. So then became a huge effort for that first year. And actually backwards of the way you normally would work. Usually you do the whole inside and strip everything. We had to do everything backwards. So that's how we started. Well, the Girl Scouts came to our rescue, as did all the neighbors from Kingston and from Dayton. Everyone pitched together. We had, a tree had hit the house, so we had a lot of tree people come and they volunteered time. We had to remove about 30 feet by 10 feet wide by about 6 feet tall of logs that were just stacked all over the place. And so different trucking companies came and helped take things away. The Midco Waste donated dumpsters. We didn't have to pay for them. We just had to pay for the fees for getting rid of stuff. So we were able to take all the siding off, the tar paper off. We had to pull nails that had held the siding on. And hundreds and thousands of holes had to be filled. And the Girl Scouts, for their silver award, one of their awards, got a paint company in North Brunswick. They got the owner of the paint company, who only did marine paint, who was retired, and his son had the business now, to donate, I don't know, 60, 80 gallons of top quality paint. And he matched the color of the paint that was on the house originally. And the Girl Scouts said they'd paint the house. So we got a lot of adults to volunteer to scrape the paint, the old paint off, and we filled all the nail holes. And everybody worked, and the girls worked very hard. That was Barbara Lonato, and I think it was Rhonda worked on that. And saved the house. It looked really beautiful when they finished. We had Boy Scouts then worked on projects of taking porches, repairing porches, rebuilding porches, putting gardens in, taking out cement that was in the wrong spot, adding rose bushes, another Girl Scout project. So we had a lot of different projects over the years, inside and out. And my husband repointed the entire basement, and he was the mentor for a lot of the Boy Scouts who rebuilt the porches. Lots of fun, and it's been a community activity.
I became involved through my contact with Joan Luckhart, who was one of the founders of the DVCC. Back in 1997, probably, when I first started. I became involved with Joan Luckhart because of the Road to Monmouth program in 2003. And she was a great organizer, and she did all kinds of wonderful things. And we had a fair going on at Reichler Park. And from then on, I became more interested in Dayton and the story that she was trying to work on about the Slack House. So I did a lot of research on the Slack House, and we had an exhibit there called The Doctors of Dayton. I did the research on the history of the house, which was built around 1869. There were several people living in town in the 1860s, and there was no doctor in Dayton. And I think that they felt that the community was big enough that they needed to have not only a doctor, but adjacent to the Slack House, on the other side of the Slack House, is the First Presbyterian Church of Dayton. And the land was purchased at the same time for both the doctor's house, what became the doctor's house, and for the church. The Rowland family was involved in that, and some other families locally who lived in Dayton. They bought the land, and then for one price, and then the house was built that eventually housed the doctor, and then they was sold to him for another price, higher price. So we can assume then, because deeds only really talk about land, if the price change is significant, that there was probably something structure built on the property, and that's why we assume that the Slack House was built. And this now housed the first doctor. The first doctor was Dr. Slack, Dr. Clarence Slack, and then I did research on him. And then I found out there was another doctor who was there for many, many years, Dr. Edgar Carroll. And he was there up until the 1930s, and there were references to him in some of the books in the township. And I also found through my research that there was another doctor in between Dr. Slack and Dr. Carroll, named now Dr. Baldwin, and that all three men had graduated from Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. Although what we call medical education then was not the same thing as we think of as medical doctors today. So I did a research on them. We had a display at the library, at the Slack House, and Joan asked me to participate in the board of the Dayton Village Citizen Coalition, the DVCC, and I've been on that for about 5 years or more. I don't really know when I first started coming to the meetings. That's what I know about the Dayton Village Citizen Coalition as far as it was founded in an effort, I believe, to see no more buildings torn down in Dayton. The Dayton Village is a small community, but many of the historic buildings in the center of town were destroyed either by fire or for various reasons. And the town does not look like the pictures we have about what it looked like, say, 1900. And the Slack House was next to what was the Wawa, the convenience store, and they wanted to expand their driveway, and they wanted to just take down the Slack House, and the local residents said, no, we don't want you to take it down. And they prevailed, and they got permission to preserve the Slack House, but there was a lot of difficult times that they had to do, and they still have a struggle, but they have a tenant in there now, helps pay the taxes and the rent and other expenses that they have in maintaining that Slack House. Their goal is eventually to have a doctor's museum there, but that is, right now, they're trying to stay focused on serving the community. And the Dayton Village Citizen Coalition not only is interested in preserving the Slack House, but also trying to improve the community.
Well, we get involved. We throw events. We try to do some environmental events. We try to make sure that big companies don't come in and take over the entire town.
Besides maintaining the Slack Carroll House, they have other events. I mean, our mission is to, make Dayton a more livable, more pleasant place, and all of South Brunswick, but basically the focus is on Dayton.
As the current president, we have a great group of volunteers that come together to really make this work. And I originally got started, I wasn't one of the original founders of the group, but I got involved more so because of my passion for gardening. And when I got involved with the group, I met other folks like Joan and Art and Barb Lee and Debbie College, who were terrific gardeners. And once I got involved with the gardening, I also learned about the community events that took place.
What I do is I run events for families. I run a pumpkin lighting, which is we take about 100 to 150 pumpkins. We allow anyone in town to come and carve them. And then at night, we set them all up and we light them. And we have food and drinks and people drive by. It's really neat.
Our holiday lighting, where we get the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts involved and all people in the area, so they kind of know their neighbors.
The Garden Club.
Oh yeah, well Art was president of the Garden Club, and as such he just promoted a lot of gardening, things around, and the big thing was the seminar in February, and he's going to head that again too. He finds speakers, anybody can come, and it always has to do with something to do with either gardening or sustainability, or one time he had flower arranging, various things, just food, that you grow and you eat in your own kitchen. So.
And we get the gardeners out from their winter sort of slumber and get excited about gardening.
There's a picnic in the summer.
In May we have a fun plant exchange, which bring gardeners from all over the town and all over the area. They learn about the